Hi everyone, welcome to 2024. Today, I'm going to be listing out my top 10 games of 2023. Normally I do this before the new year, but I got sick when I wanted to do it. I've been building a Millennium Falcon Lego set, and I've been trying to beat Baldur's Gate 3 before I do this. I'm at the last mission of Baldur's Gate 3. I didn't beat the last boss yet, but I think it's safe to say that I have confidence in where I'm placing that game on my list, if at all. But yeah, anyway, apologies for the late video. I still will be doing my top 10 most anticipated games of 2024. I'm gonna react to my top 10 most anticipated games of 2023 that I did in the beginning of 2023. Because I like to look back on that and kind of be like, aha, that game actually sucked, or actually that game was really good, or whatever games that I think should have probably been on there. If you don't know me, my name's Delilah, aka ASSASSINA. Welcome back to my channel. So this year was crazy. There were so many 9s and 10s, 8s releasing back to back. Almost every game that came out this year was just so good. I mean, yeah, there were some bad games like Gollum and stuff like that, but the amount of heavy hitters was so much that I couldn't even play everything. I'm surprised I played all of the games that got nominated for the Game Awards this year, for Game of the Year. But there's still so many games that came out this year that I didn't get to play, like Remnant and Dredge, and I'll explain which games I didn't get to play at the end so you guys understand why a game you may have put on your list didn't wind up on mine. And of course, if you have any recommendations of games that came out this year that you think I would enjoy, feel free to let me know in the comments, or just let me know your favorite games this year. That would be great. I even stopped platinuming games this year. I think I got a total of 4 platinums this year just because there were so many new games, and I'd rather play all of the new games one time through than to spend so much time on a single title. Plus this year, I started a new job, which is why I haven't been streaming on Twitch. It's just been a lot. So yeah, thank you guys for understanding. I do hope in 2024 I can somehow fit streaming into my schedule, but I'm not there yet. But yeah, anyway, that's for the Twitch people. This is YouTube, so sorry. But yeah, this year was so good that I really wish that I could like clone myself or something to have gotten through all of the games. But it looks like 2024 is gonna be pretty slow in the beginning, at least. We don't really know exact release dates for a lot of games, so hopefully I'll get to play catch up. Honestly, I've been stewing on this list for a really long time and I'm still not confident in it. I'm sure that in time I might even change the order of the games that I'm listing here. Okay, let's just get into it. I'm gonna actually do my top 11 games of 2023, but 10 is good for like, you know, videos and thumbnails and stuff. But I'm actually gonna talk about 11, so because there was that many games that I had to talk about one. I typically do this though, even in a year that's not as strong as 2023. Number 11 is Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I was so excited to play a sequel to one of my favorite Star Wars games ever, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, as I quickly became attached to Cal Kestis and his crew. Let's not pretend that a semi-Souls-like game where you play as a Jedi isn't badass. It is, and I wanted more, and I got it. This time we explored different planets, got closer to our crew after being apart for some time, and met a lot more NPCs throughout the journey. While the sequel held up in terms of story, character building, and combat, it lacked in scope. Bigger isn't better, and it seems Respawn didn't agree. The concise and linear nature of the first game was lost here, making the world more expansive and not in a good way. It felt like padding, a way to have players put more time into a game with little to no purpose and little to no substance. A way to add unnecessary RPG elements into an action game that didn't need it. It actually bogged it down. A way to add an exhausting amount of NPC dialogue that barely held much meaning to the world or lore. I enjoyed this game a lot, and it's mostly because of the great story, amazing character development, beautiful new environments, and satisfying combat, but the expansive world concept just made doing anything extra a slog. I hope Respawn scales the next game back a lot to preserve the magic of the first game and keep the welcomed added combat changes of Star Wars Jedi Survivor. And now we're at number 10, which is Super Mario Wonder. I haven't had a passion for 2D Mario games since I was a kid during the NES and SNES days. At a certain point I figured they're all similar, right? I'll pass for now. However, Super Mario Wonder invigorated the magic I felt playing Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario World back in the days. To put things into context, Super Mario World was the very first game that I 100% completed, and was thus the seed to start my completionist journey, which actually died this year. Somehow, Super Mario Wonder made me want to do it all over again. The new abilities, creative level designs, and modern quality of life elements made this game, well, wonderful. I had a blast playing co-op with my partner, finding all the seeds, discovering secret areas, and being somewhat harassed by this inspirational flower. This is definitely one of the easier 2D Mario games, but the challenge still comes when you do endgame secret areas. And here we go, number 9 is Baldur's Gate 3. Holy crap, please don't be mad at me that it's this far low on my list. Look, I'm gonna explain, okay? I promise I will explain. This game was completely off my radar because I never played its predecessors, never got into D&D, and truthfully only played a handful of CRPGs in my far past. I'll fully admit that I only played this game because of the hype and accolades. I knew this wouldn't be my cup of tea, and while I prefer other types of tea, this one kept me sipping and asking for refills. I honestly think my old age turns me off from games this dense, and I've become too accustomed to being fully immersed in games that keep my full attention with action combat. I grew out of any type of turn-based combat a long time ago and can only tolerate about one per year. It's totally a me thing. If this was 15-year-old ASSASSINA, she would eat this game up, spending all of her idle time reading every book, organizing inventory obsessively, experimenting with different classes or builds, and replaying the game to explore as many of the 17,000 endings possible. For a game that doesn't cater to my personal time boundaries, mental capacity, and quite frankly lack of patience, I was surprised how motivated I was to see it through. This is wholeheartedly thanks to the top-tier voice acting, character design, environmental storytelling, and world building. Every single freaking NPC was acted so well and had a unique and detailed design. I haven't cared about character bonds with random non-support NPCs since Mass Effect. Yet, even a game like Mass Effect didn't have the numerous amount of player choice and consequences as Baldur's Gate 3 did. I had this constant push and pull of, do I compulsively save and load back if I didn't make the right choice? Or do I look up every outcome for this choice and choose what fits my headcanon? Or do I just say fuck it and let the dice roll and live with it? My very busy and easily overwhelmed brain couldn't handle all of that straight up. Another element sort of impeding this game from being higher on my personal list is the amount of bugs on the PS5 version. I would often lose hours of progress simply because I got stuck in an inventory screen freeze, but I'm confident Larian's working on it. I also had some issues where the textures didn't pop in, most notably during the final missions when things were supposed to be epic and all of the characters that you met were supposed to come together for an epic final battle, and that really took away from the immersion, although it did make me laugh. But I know Larian's working on it, and I know they're probably focusing more on PC rather than the us console plebs. I'm surprised how they managed to make a game that is designed for a computer function pretty damn well on console, but I do think playing on console dampened my experience slightly. Another issue I had is with the mission structure being very confusing and unclear. There are certain prerequisites that weren't very clear and kind of annoying. I know other games I love like Elden Ring or Dark Souls have a similar level of vagueness for next steps, but for a game that has so many different consequences and outcomes, it's even more important that the mission prerequisites were made more clear so that I can stick to my headcanon. If I was to rate this game on a critical level, it's exquisite and completely reinvigorated a dormant genre. However, this is my personal game of the year list, and the game's only real fault, bugs aside, is my personal preference. Yet, I can't even pretend that I don't want to play again and turn full evil. Number 8 is Final Fantasy XVI. Final Fantasy XVI is a Final Fantasy game that makes a significant deviation from other games in the series with a dark aesthetic and more hack and slash combat. The story is full of fantasy elements that exacerbate political turmoil in this world, and it's damn good. I love the characters and world building so much. There's just so much depth to the world and the characters. There are so many layers that would typically be difficult for a burnt out mind like mine to remember. However, the implementation of this active time lore system made everything easy to digest and resonate. I hope more games adopt this. Unfortunately, this amazing game also suffers from padding with the side quests. Don't get me wrong, the character and world implications for those side quests are really cool, but the journey there is a very long and redundant fetch quest. The game became extremely formulaic, where you would have 2 hours of amazing, bombastic, visually appealing main story moments and then 2 to 4 hours of boring side quests. I almost wish Final Fantasy XVI would have deviated completely from any RPG systems and just focused on the action adventure to scale things back and make it more cohesive. The RPG elements serve no purpose, where I'm hesitant to actually call this game an RPG. It's a good thing the story moments are dramatic and heart-wrenching. It's so good. The boss fights against icons feel as thrilling as Dragon Ball Z or God of War battles. It's eye candy. Plus, the way the music crescendos during boss fights really makes me too excited where it's hard to contain myself. The music score is god tier. It's too bad the side quests sincerely mess with the pacing of the game that had potential to be the #1 game of the year. Number 7 is a game that I love so much that I wish I could put it earlier in my list, but just because of the amount of games that came out this year that I love, it's at number 7, which is Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon. It's been over a decade since I played an Armored Core game, and we're back. After years of From Software perfecting the Souls series formula, ostensibly creating a new subgenre, and reaching the heights of Game of the Year, this game puts all of that budget and expertise back into their very niche mech series. I had a feeling this would be a redemption for Armored Core, and it was. Armored Core 6: Fires of Rubicon is the best mech game I've played since Titanfall. It's smooth, kinetic, challenging, and badass. The customizability in the mech builds is fantastic, where you can be a quick, squishy, sword-wielding mech or a big, slow, tanky minigun-wielding mech. Combat kind of forces you to try different builds for different boss fights to succeed. Plus, there are so many cosmetic options, including colors, stamps, logos, and luster. I spent many hours creating mechs inspired by the color palettes of Death Scythe from Gundam Wing, Classic Gundam 79, the Dragon Zord from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, or Samus Aran from Metroid. If you're wondering if Armored Core 6 is anything like Dark Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne, or Elden Ring, it's not. This is a mech fantasy through and through, but I definitely see some inspiration in the combat's polish, the use of a stagger system, which is reminiscent of Sekiro's posture system. Some movesets from bosses reminded me of other bosses in the Souls series, artistic environments, and amazing music score. This game is challenging, but I won't say that it's as challenging as the Souls games. In From Software fashion, the story in this game is told through documents and audio calls, so I highly recommend you turn down the music and effects sound to hear the dialogue during combat, because it's very good. This isn't a narrative peak in gaming, but for a game that showed 0 humans and only mechs, I felt connected to certain characters without ever having seen their face. What's going on in Rubicon is fascinating, but to understand the whole picture, you need to pay attention and put pieces together. It's vague, but cool. Armored Core 6 rules. Number 6 is also so good. Like, all these games could have been #1 and might be #1, like, if you ask me on a different day, but for now, it's number 6, and that's Lies of P. There's been way too many Souls-like or Souls-inspired games, and none of them truly get what makes a From Software game so special. Every time I hear a game is a Souls-like, I kinda sigh in disappointment, despite loving the subgenre. Yet my intrigue for an explicitly dark Pinocchio story with Souls-like gameplay could not be wavered. My morbid curiosity helped me discover the only game that is truly faithful to the subgenre, Lies of P. It doesn't feel like a ripoff either. Lies of P has areas that are reminiscent of Bloodborne and BioShock. The gameplay combines dodging and parrying, which feels like a mix and match of Bloodborne and Sekiro. The boss designs are on par with From Software bosses while having their very own unique puppet aesthetic. Lies of P certainly encapsulates the get good mentality, but it's overall much easier than From Software games. The only aspect of this game that was on the weaker side is the story. There were some messed up implications of unethical experimentation, human and puppet romance, and torture, but ultimately the story and lore didn't stand out. Either way, I had so much fun playing this game, and the end credits scene was so unexpected that it literally blew my mind to think where the heck Niaoi's Games, is that how you say it, or Round 8 Studios are headed with their future IPs. Number 5 is going a little bit against my rules. I usually will not vote for a game that's a remake that is kind of one-to-one. But I'm adding it here because I just love it so much. And I know it's not fair to the other games because this game was already great in 2008? But I just couldn't help how much I loved it. So I'm gonna put it because it's my personal list and not my critical list. So that's Dead Space. 2023 started off strong with this stellar remake, releasing in the beginning of the year. The original game may have been released in 2008, but even the OG holds up very well. While Dead Space may not have needed a remake, I'm extremely happy that we got one. This remake adds so many details to the necromorphs, making the enemies more horrific than ever. Not to mention the dismemberment system is a lot more graphic, allowing you to see flesh melt off their bones little by little. The USG Ishimura is even creepier to explore with the added lighting effects and updated graphics. Not only is exploring more visually astounding, but the reworked tram systems allow backtracking through the entire ship to clean up missed collectibles and items. The zero gravity sections went from being one of the more jankier parts of the OG Dead Space and remade into the coolest sections in the entire game. Kinesis in any video game is satisfying, like in Control, Star Wars, Scarlet Nexus, or BioShock, and it's even better in the Dead Space remake. They added a voice to Isaac, which made certain story beats feel a lot more impactful. But I'm not gonna lie, for the secret ending that's revealed at the end credit scene when you do New Game Plus and collect all of these items, it reveals a very cool verbal and facial demonstration of what's to come. The OG Dead Space was already an example of a perfectly paced game with zero padding and lots of fun. This remake captures all of that and somehow makes a masterpiece a better masterpiece? Number 4 is Spider-Man 2. As a New York City native, swinging through the city as Spider-Man is a freaking treat. It's always been fun and some of the best traversal mechanics in gaming, period. But in Spider-Man 2, it's even better? How? I don't even know how they managed to iterate on this game and still make the same city feel like a refreshing experience. The new wingsuit and updraft system gave players a nice aerial view of the New York City skyline. The color scheme of the sky changing depending on the time of day or state of the city is breathtaking. There's so much attention to detail and quality put into this game, to the point where if you had an epic battle in a certain part of the city, when you go back to that part, the destruction will still be there. Or you'll even see some destruction on Spider-Man's suit. The combat is more refined and accessible, though some would argue it's much easier, but I still had fun regardless. The cooldown abilities made combat more simplistic, but the parry system added some challenge. The new combat system truly shined during the very satisfying boss fights. The story is also excellent, but it feels like Insomniac crammed way too many character arcs and villains into one game, thus not allowing certain moments to feel well fleshed out. Don't get me wrong, I like a contained experience, but Miles Morales and some other core character moments felt a bit shortchanged. I still enjoyed every second of this game, and it was the first game I platinumed since Metal Gear Solid 3 back in February because it was an absolute blast and treat to complete. Spider-Man 2 also had an incredible what the f moment that brought an amazing, spectacular, ultimate, sensational, and unexpected experience to this game. Number 3 is Resident Evil 4 Remake. How is it that we were blessed with two fantastic remakes of two games that were perfectly paced and masterclasses of the survival horror genre, Resident Evil 4 and Dead Space? Resident Evil 4 Remake leans into the series' horror roots even further with this remake, and without stripping it of the camp we know and love from the original. The Ganados look so much more menacing, and the environments of the village, castle, and island are way creepier. Yet exploring through these creepy environments, Leon still hits the one-liners we know and love. The combat in the OG RE4 rules, but in this remake, Leon can parry with his knife and move while shooting. This adds so much satisfaction and depth to the existing combat arsenal and cool abilities like Leon's iconic kick. There's a lot more quality of life elements like adding a weapon wheel, no QTEs, and certain sections of the game being revamped to be way less annoying. Speaking of less annoying, you don't need to shove Ashley into dumpsters or lockers anymore. While having her hover closer or away from you isn't any better, at least we don't have to hear her say, "Where are you going, Leon?" every 5 seconds. The game is excellent, but my only real complaint is Salazar's remake version isn't what I hoped for, and Ada's voice actress needed a bit more practice. Oh, and this game is like less horny, like way less horny. Resident Evil 4 Remake is another example of a perfect game remade to be more perfect. Even the Separate Ways DLC is way more fleshed out, paying homage to the OG sections that were missed in the core remake and adding a satisfying grappling hook combat and traversal mechanic to Ada Wong's arsenal. Number 2, I almost made number 1, but then ultimately made number 2, and actually could be number 3 because Resident Evil 4 could be number 2, and I couldn't really, it was hard to come up with an order, but number 2 is Alan Wake 2. It's been 13 years since fans of this cult classic series wanted to get some clear answer to it's not a lake, it's an ocean. And well, I'm sorry to say, but after you play this game, you'll be left with more questions. Remedy is trying to create a universe where several of their IP are connected either as explicitly as Control and Alan Wake or as minimalistically as Max Payne. As we have learned from Marvel, having a multiverse can be challenging to execute, but in this case, the Remedy universe is undoubtedly convoluted. The ending of Alan Wake 2 left me me feeling cautiously optimistic about the series' future. I'm conflicted between being disappointed or excited for more. The ending is actually my only criticism. The journey was absolutely fantastic and exceeded my expectations. I always wanted the first Alan Wake game to lean into horror a bit more, and Alan Wake 2 gave me just that. I also wanted the first Alan Wake game to scale back on the combat encounters, which became redundant and exhausting halfway through the game, and Alan Wake 2 gave me just that. I wanted Alan Wake 2 to adopt the smoothness of Control's gunplay and movement, but we didn't get that, which makes sense because hurling objects across a room while having unlimited ammo would completely strip the game of its survival horror direction. The combat would have been better, but I still enjoyed fighting the Taken. I love the fear factor of not being able to see what's behind me and hearing eerie whispers and growls in my vicinity. The sound design and music are fantastic. I love not being able to tell the difference between a hostile and non-hostile Taken, and deciding if I should waste ammo to figure it out or just wait until one teleported into my face and took away half of my health. The game is scary, and it's not because of the cheesy jump scares, those sucked. What took me over with this game and thus landing it on my second place slot for my personal game of the year list is the obvious inspiration from Resident Evil and Silent Hill. The puzzle solving in the saga sections were very reminiscent of the Resident Evil games, and the environmental manipulation of the Alan Wake sections felt very Silent Hill. That is, until we had to do algebra to open up cult stashes. Ugh. Even the map is perfect and is clearly inspired by the maps in Silent Hill. I'm a sucker for small town horror, and this game delivered. Where Alan Wake 2 exceeded my expectations is in its creative direction in implementing live action scenes into game animation without looking pasted, and adding depth to characters that weren't present in the original game. The We Sing mission is an absolute treat for creatives. Alan Wake 2 is concise in its gameplay but convoluted in its story. It's pretentious as fuck, and I love it. And my number one game of the year, which you probably deduced by now, is The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Who knew that the sequel to The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild would make that game look like a beta? I adored Breath of the Wild, but Tears of the Kingdom is better by a long shot. The physics in this game fostered amazing puzzle-solving moments and fantastic player creativity with building. You can spend 10 hours exploring caves and shrines in Hyrule, or 10 hours making a penis-shaped rocket. This game has a clear main story path that you can approach in any order that you like, and then stumbling upon the wonders of Hyrule makes exploring feel more like a natural occurrence. This game expands beyond Hyrule, making it 3 times the size of Breath of the Wild, because you can explore the upside-down world called the Depths or the Islands in the Sky. I absolutely love skydiving off a sky island and dashing into a deep, dark, red and black hole in the ground of Hyrule. Hear a deep horn sound as the screen becomes black before you need to shoot a bright bloom flower from your bow and arrow just to see where you're landing. There's almost too much to do in this game, but it never felt like I had to do any of it. I love feeling content knowing that I can just do whatever I wanted as I stumbled upon it, and I was rewarded every time. Tears of the Kingdom allows players to approach the game's vast plethora of content as they want, and it doesn't punish you for paving your own path. The temples in Tears of the Kingdom felt more like classic Legend of Zelda dungeons, each with unique puzzles and traversal, amazing music, and very cool boss fights at the end. This is also the absolute best story in any Zelda game ever, giving every NPC a meaningful role, including our princess, who played one of the most crucial roles in this game. I shed tears in Tears of the Kingdom. My only criticisms of this game is not being able to call a horse, some of the mission objectives being unclear, and the scope being too big to ever see through to completion. I may be biased because this is my favorite video game franchise since childhood, and it tugs at the heartstrings a bit too hard. No shade to Mario, but Zelda is Nintendo at its pinnacle, and Link should be their poster boy. So that's it. Those are my top 11 games of 2023. Let me know yours in the comments, and just so you know, other games that I did play this year, so you can see why they didn't fall on my list. I played Hogwarts Legacy. I actually liked it initially, but eventually it got kind of boring, very Ubisoft redundant, open world checkmark kind of thing. Not really my thing, although I did like the combat. The wizard combat was really cool. Exploring Hogwarts was awesome, but once it opened up, I was like, oh, this is actually kind of boring. I also played Starfield. I was very bored at this game. I didn't finish it, which is a shame because I was looking for like a Fallout or Skyrim in space, but this didn't even have the exploration that those games had, and it just kind of felt like an artifact fetch quest, to be honest, and none of the characters really compelled me enough to stick it through. The other game I played was Hi-Fi Rush. It was okay. I didn't like it as much as other people, which makes me feel kind of bad because I feel like people love this game, and I do have a theory that it's because it shadow dropped at a time where no other games were out, but maybe I'm being cynical, but it didn't do much for me. I do like that it was like an easier rhythm game mixed with hack and slash combat, but ultimately I didn't really like it that much. I didn't think it was bad. It didn't have its hooks in me, and because I knew there were so many games that I needed to play this year, and because I didn't play it when it released, when Shadow dropped, I was starting a new job, so I didn't really have time, and I think I was playing another game. I can't remember what game. It was in the beginning of the year. I just didn't finish it. I was like, you know what? I'd rather play a game that I'm actually enjoying. So yeah. The other game I played was Diablo 4. Honestly, I really liked this game. I just didn't get to finish it because I was playing co-op with my partner, and we just haven't had time to sit down and play games together. The other game I played was Wo Long Fallen Dynasty. I liked it a lot, but I didn't finish it. Again, there were just too many games. I also started Metroid Prime Remastered. I love it, but I didn't finish it. Just time. That's it. Plus, I probably wouldn't have even put this game on my list because it's a remaster, not a remake. So yeah. Other games I wanted to play, but I didn't get to were Dead Island 2, Fatal Frame Mask of the Lunar Eclipse, Remnant 2, Street Fighter 6, Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty, Sea of Stars, Super Mario RPG, Assassin's Creed Mirage, Mortal Kombat 1, and Dredge. The only one I suspect may have made it on my list if I go back and play it is probably Remnant 2 or Cyberpunk, but again, I kind of already put Cyberpunk 2077, the original, as my favorite game of the year that it came out. I think it was 2020. So I don't really feel the need to put it, even if I do love it. So yeah, that's my list. Let me know what you guys think. Hope you enjoyed this. Sorry it was late. Take care, guys. Have a good new year. Bye.